Listen to what Scott Jennings said yesterday. By the way, two black females were on the panel. He might have picked the wrong time to say this. Here's Scott Jennings on CNN last night blaming DEI partially for why these fires took place. Have a listen to this.
The priorities, because also in California, you might have recall a news story from last year. There was some interest in the fire departments and the firefighters in California, and the interest was that there were too many white men who were firefighters, and we need to have a program in California to make sure we don't have enough white men as firefighters. So we have DEI, we have budget. And yet, I'm wondering now, if your house is burning down, how much do you care what color the firefighters are?
You can respond and then.
No priority.
Okay. Why is he even bringing that up?
Okay, first of all, that is not a point well taken, because the DEI hires had nothing to do with trying to get white people on the fire department. That was a fairness doctrine that was inserted into the American public in order to get certain races to even have an availability to assault. I mean, a firefighter, they have a pension, they have great pay, they have days off. It's a great job. So what was happening was they're outnumbered. You know, for instance, the black population is only about 10 or 11% of the population. Well, they're not going to get the greater majority of the jobs. So they created a fairness doctrine to try to get more. We could talk about whether or not that was the correct thing to do, but it had nothing to do with it. And Scott Jennings, by the way, if you don't mind me saying, is a total. He's ridiculous. He's a liar. And I've already texted and I've tweeted to CNN, because Abby Phillip, he's always on her show, she doesn't check him. She doesn't fact check him. They talk about sexual abuse, for instance, or fraud or felonies. And he goes, yeah, well, you know, and that judge was out for him. And he doesn't want to talk about the 34 felonies. If you or I did what Trump did to overvalue properties, to get more money from the bank, we'd both be in jail.
Yeah, I agree with you, and everything. Most of what Scott Jennings says is total crap.
He does an enormous word salad that doesn't make sense.
What an embarrassment! DEI hires, I agree, had nothing to do with the fires that took place, and the far right is also claiming 2% budget cuts on firefighters that might have led to this. That is ridiculous. In fact, if you look at the budget cuts and where the pressure came from, it didn't come from Democrats. You could look this up. It actually came from Republicans. So they're blaming 2% budget cuts, which really have nothing to do with what's taking place here. They're blaming DEI hires, just like last week when they blamed Joe Biden's open borders and migrants for what took place in New Orleans. This is what the right does. Instead of talking about the families, talking about the victims, trying to figure out how we can prevent something like this from happening again, all they want to do is score political points. It's what Donald Trump has done and everybody else.
Well, Gavin Newsom is on the news. You can tell his heart's breaking, and we're going to support them and rebuild. And while he's doing that, Trump is putting out information that he wouldn't give the water from the north, and he wouldn't allow it to go to the south. And what he did was he directed some water to save certain species that would become extinct.
Right.
And who Donald Trump says don't matter. And so that water was not directed to these places, but they ran out of water the first day. There wasn't enough water to put the fires out.
And there were issues with water pressurization. There were other issues as well. And this is unprecedented. It's an unprecedented
And
tragedy.
the suppression helicopters, because it was 100 miles an hour wind, they couldn't get in there.
Helicopters couldn't get up there. You're absolutely right.
So there was no suppression at all.
And raking leaves wouldn't have changed anything. So this didn't start in the woods. It started in a residential area. That's another thing that right-wingers are saying out there. This didn't happen in the forests, okay? It happened in residential
We've
areas.
all seen California. It's dry as a bone.
Yeah.
When you start getting away from the beach and into the hillside, it's all dry.
But I agree with you. Scott Jennings is a complete douchebag.